Hi, I'm Jay, the creator here at the Thrifty Food Plan channel, and this video reflects a personal frustration of mine as I have tried to use the USDA Thrifty Food Plan to guide both my budget for food and to try to help me track nutrition spending to increase the likelihood that my nutritional needs are being met. And as you'll see in a minute, the USDA Thrifty Food Plan includes sort of this category for miscellaneous items that I always overspend on. And I wanted to unpack sort of why this happens. And this is a longer video. There are a bunch of citations in the description box below. But I hope that the journey through all of this information can help all of us sort of be a little more realistic than perhaps national food policy dictates about the miscellaneous things that end up in our grocery cart, because I believe they serve a function. So let's get to it. So if you watch this channel, you know that the USDA Thrifty Food Plan is what I use to set my budget every week, every month for groceries. The USDA Thrifty Food Plan also is the basis for federal SNAP EBT food stamp benefits. And it's not just a budgetary tool, because the Thrifty Food Plan does provide these estimates about how much of what we spend should be allocated to each sort of nutritional area: vegetables, fruits, grains, protein foods, dairy, and the beautiful miscellaneous category. The miscellaneous category includes prepared foods, so your frozen pizza, for me, coffee and tea, your olive oil, your margarine, all your spices and sauces, and other sort of foods and beverages. So it includes, for me, like seltzer and the occasional piece of chocolate, right? So this miscellaneous category includes a lot of items, and I'm only supposed to spend 7% of all of my dollars on miscellaneous items, because I'm supposed to be spending the bulk of my money in the other categories. Now, this is what my spending actually looks like in the nutritional category. So in November, when I tallied it all up, I had spent 31% of all of my dollars in miscellaneous. I was able to get that down in December to 17%. And mostly what I spend here on the regular in the miscellaneous category is money on coffee, seltzer, and a little bit of chocolate, because I eat a piece of chocolate every single day. Not a whole candy bar, like a piece of chocolate. So I have struggled forever to get my miscellaneous spending in line. So the USDA Thrifty Plan is based on sort of the federal food policy. And our federal government in the United States is really trying to solve sort of chronic issues for US residents with chronic disease. And they have specific focus on reducing obesity and sort of overweightness, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. And they also want to increase bone health and muscular strength, which is important for people in my age group as we get older, right? Like, we've got to pay attention to those things. And so our national food policy is actually designed to try to reduce and prevent chronic disease, because the truth is, there is a relationship between what we put in our bodies and our risk for chronic disease. Now, our diets are not the only factor, of course, right? There are genetic factors. We can put other things in our bodies, like alcohol and cigarette smoke and pot smoke, right? Which also might impact some of these things. That said, when it comes to national food policy, they really, really want us to be eating food that reduces our risk of chronic disease, increases the likelihood that we'll have strong bones and muscles. The challenge for the federal government is that the last time they surveyed us, about 59% of us, only 59% of us actually followed their nutritional guidance. Only 59% of us. And so as they are constructing things like the USDA Thrifty Food Plan, they are trying to compel us to eat a healthier diet. Now, if you are in my age bracket, you were probably raised with the food pyramid. And somehow I missed that about 10 years ago, we actually got rid of the food pyramid. And now our federal food policy is based on what they call my plate. And what my plate tells us is that half of our plates at basically every meal, half of our plate should be fruits and vegetables, more vegetables than fruits. Um, the other side of our plate should have grains in it, grains on it, and we should have a little more grain than we have protein. Okay. And then the federal government is still advising that we need dairy. So this is the replacement for the food pyramid that I grew up with. And it's called My Plate. And there are linked resources down below. But this is basically what the federal government is saying our meals should basically look like to help make sure that we're eating a nutrient dense diet, right? So it should come as no surprise then that the USDA Thrifty Food Plan has the exact same categories in it when it comes to nutritional spending. And you will notice our little plate on the left does not include anything about miscellaneous items. It doesn't include any information about oils and other fats. It doesn't include any information about spices. There is not a cup of coffee on that plate, right? Um, and so, the guidance that we get from the USDA Thrifty Plan about what percentage of our money we should be spending in the nutritional categories is really tied to the My Plate program that the federal government really wants all of us to follow. The problem is that our friends at the University of Missouri actually looked at the data, and for most US residents, including households that are lower income, we only spend about 20% of our dollars on fruits and vegetables. And we actually spent closer to 40% of our dollars on meats and that beautiful miscellaneous category. So this is the policy plate, and this is what our plates probably actually look like, right? So the USDA Thrifty Food Plan is telling us to spend about 40% of our dollars on fruits and vegetables, but in reality, we're spending 40% of our dollars on proteins and miscellaneous and less on fruits and veg. So why is it that U.S. residents, including me, have so much trouble sort of following the dietary guidance from our federal government? I want to be super clear here. It's not because we don't know better. When asked, when the policy wonks at the federal government bothered to survey people and ask them about barriers, right? Like 84% of us said we don't need any more information from you about nutritional guidance. We get that spinach salad is a healthier option than pizza. We get it. The barriers that actually matter the most for all of us when the policy wonks ask us, right, is affordability. And I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. We've talked a lot on the channel, and everyone is really experiencing pretty significant food inflation still, right? So we know that our food is getting more expensive, and we know that there are lots of reasons why that is happening, none of which we actually control as individual residents in the United States. The truth, though, is that there are some systems issues that have always made it harder to eat a healthy diet. right? Like buying a pint of strawberries in 2018 when this video and this report was done by Vox, right? Like that pound of strawberries at that time was $3.92, but you could get strawberry jam for $2.99, right? So there have always been system issues that oftentimes make eating a healthy diet more expensive. Now, that said, part of what I try to show on my channel is that it is possible to eat a nutrient dense diet in a really cost effective way. It just takes a lot of work, quite frankly. It just takes a lot of work. But when folks at the USDA bother to ask people what the barrier is, the number one answer is affordability. Affordability. The second reason, the second barrier is time. And I'm going to give a real life example from the period in which my daughter, the college phenom, was still living at home, right? So I could buy at the Kroger for $4, basically. For $3.99, I could buy 6 ounces of baby spinach, spend 15 minutes cutting up some extra vegetables, mixing some salad dressing at home or using something jarred, and throw a protein on it, bake a chicken breast for her, some tofu for me, so like 30, 45 minutes later, I could have a beautiful spinach salad for us to have for dinner. That is the healthy option, right? But the truth is, when the phenom was still in school, like kindergarten through 12th grade, I was still working 50 to 70 hours a week. And I didn't always have the time or energy or chutzpah at the end of the day to spend my time sort of making us a big, beautiful spinach salad. So sometimes what I did instead was I would buy her a frozen pizza, and that child would have pizza for dinner. Now, we didn't do that every night, but there were just some nights when time constraints and lethargy and just being overworked and all the things, like she'd have pizza for dinner. She would, and I'm gonna own that. So these are the two reasons, really, that when the USDA bothered to ask people, the two things that get in the way of us following their dietary guidance really are affordability and time. It's hard for us to figure out how to afford it, and it's hard for us to make time to prep all the food. Now, I have a couple of additional hypotheses about why folks like me might be overspending in that miscellaneous category, which necessarily means I'm spending less on veg and fruit and healthy proteins and grains and dairy. I have two more hypotheses. All the stuff in the miscellaneous category is what helps food taste better, right? Like it's like the margarine and the butter and the olive oil. It's the sauces and the spices. And like the truth is, like I can eat plain baked tofu, and I do, but I got to tell you, I like it a lot better when it's in a curry, and so does my kid, right? And so I'm going to spend miscellaneous money to get things that are going to make my food taste better. And I think then that these miscellaneous items that I keep overspending on really do have a purpose and a function. Because, I mean, I'll eat that baked tofu, but I don't love it. And I'm not even sure my kid would eat it if it didn't have some seasoning on it, you know? So I think taste matters. Food, we won't eat food that doesn't taste good, or we'll be less likely to eat it all before it goes bad, right? And like the folks at the USDA don't ask us questions. Like the policy wonks don't ask us questions about taste. And I'm not saying that all of our food needs to be slathered in butter and oil and honey and sugar. and jam. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is like we got to be realistic that human beings not only have a desire to eat nutrient dense food, we also want that food to taste good. And I don't think that's unreasonable. The fourth thing I would put out there is that I think treats matter. Like even if the policy wonks don't ask about them. Now, on this picture is a picture that was in one of my what I eat in a day videos. And this was a salad that I had for lunch that was arugula, red pepper. I think it has some chopped cucumber in there, some edamame, with a little bit of like low fat homemade dressing. I mean, this is a super healthy salad, super healthy salad. And to the side there is my little piece of chocolate. Now, I just don't think that like if I want to like reward myself for eating the giant salad for lunch, which I do almost every day, a salad like this one, but I just think it's okay for me to have a piece of chocolate. And there is some emerging research, and I'll drop it in the description box below, right? I mean, there are dangers when we completely eliminate foods from our diet. And I'm on a mostly whole food, plant-based diet with some exceptions. And one of those exceptions is chocolate, right? The idea is that we should eat like a varied and diverse diet. And we shouldn't necessarily be eliminating things kind of wholesale, because then we can like have a deficit mentality about food. And I just think I think that raises risks of having disordered eating. And all of that just to say, like, I don't think it makes us bad if we have a treat now and then. And I'm not saying that the Snicker bar should be my lunch. What I am saying is that in all that is human and good in the world, it has got to be okay for me to buy a piece of chocolate to go with my gigantic salad, right? And in the same way, like I have oats every single morning with some nuts chopped in, with some soy in it, with some fruit in it every morning. And you know what? I have a cup of coffee with it, right? But I think sort of these treats, these foods that like or drinks that are special treats that maybe bring us a little joy. I just think that maybe that's what drives us to spend more in the miscellaneous category too. Coffee and tea, other foods and beverages, right? Like a cookie every once in a while isn't gonna hurt anybody. So my opinion is that I really wish that the policy wonks would talk with us about treats, and not vilify treats. And that is what I wish. So, what do we do, right? Because the feds aren't wrong. The feds aren't wrong. Like a plate that looks this way is probably much healthier for us. It is much healthier for us than the frozen pizza I would occasionally serve up for my daughter for 40 cents more than 6 ounces of spinach, right? Like they're not wrong. So I think the path forward is that we eat the way the policy recommends the vast majority of the time, because they're not wrong. If we eat this way, we are less likely to be impacted by chronic diseases. We are probably more likely to have strong bones and a good muscular structure. They're not wrong. I mean, that is what the science says. And periodically, we have got to give ourselves some grace for reality to inform the choices that we make. And that includes reality, includes time, it includes affordability, it includes taste. I mean, don't buy Brussels sprouts if you don't like them, but you might like Brussels sprouts if you put some reduced balsamic vinegar on them. right? Like taste matters. And I'm going to argue that treats matter. Um, so I think it is a both and. And going forward, I am very much going to treat the USDA Thrifty Food Plan guidance as guidance. And I am going to stop vilifying myself for going over in the miscellaneous spending category. Now, if I start eating chocolate bars every day for lunch instead of my salad, I'm going to have a different conversation with myself and with all of you. But that is not what I am talking about. I think the way forward for me and maybe for you, right, is a little bit of a both and mentality on this. Eat the way the policy recommends a majority of the time and give ourselves some grace for like what it really means to be a human. So that is my lecture slash tirade slash venting about miscellaneous food costs and the USDA Thrifty Food Plan and all of the national policy, food policy behind it. I'd love to hear where y'all agree and disagree with me. I'd love to hear your hypotheses, what resonates with you, what doesn't, what seems missing in all of this. Thank you for listening, and thank you for helping to round out my thinking in the comments. Do hit that like button, do subscribe if you haven't, and do come back on Thursday when we'll have another grocery haul and meal plan, informed by the guidance from the USDA's Thrifty Food Plan. Ha! Thanks for coming.